Hello, and well, we've got a lot to talk about today, don't we? Behaviors added, skill-based matchmaking. So I was gonna do. We've got two videos lined up. We've got a thoughts video on Pinhead. Oh my god, and a thoughts video on the MMR. Now the MMR is much more of a hot topic than Pinhead. It just is. It's as simple as that. So I thought I would start off with MMR. There is a DLC code for Pinhead in this video. It's hidden in the video, so look out for it. It's gonna be split up into parts. I was gonna into various parts, actually, not two parts. It's for all platforms, and it contains Pinhead, the charm, and all of his skins. So good luck. It's not in a random order. I was gonna put it in a random order, but it's just too mean. Like, the code is just too long. So it is in the correct order. You just have to find it in the video. Good luck. So if you've been living under a rock, I'm going to explain to you what MMR is. If you already know what MMR is, skip to the timestamp shown on screen. I promise there's not a code in this bit, so you're not missing out. Skip the timestamp on screen, and for my thoughts on the system. But for the rest of you, MMR is, well, it's a form of skill-based matchmaking, and it is completely replacing the current rank-based matchmaking that is in the game currently. There are a set of invisible criteria that the game is judging you on. We don't know what they are. Well, we sort of do, thanks to a data mine, but we'll cover that later. But it's effectively a set of invisible criteria that the game judges you on, and it secretly ups or lowers your rank after each game, and that dictates what players you get. It's basically a big equation, and it gives you a number at the end, and your number is your MMR. Typically, in most games, it goes up to about 5,000, but in this game, it's 1,900. It's not a problem. It's just the percentages they've used their numbers on. The rank system in the game has been completely changed. I say completely changed. It's been reskinned. It's functionally identical, but it's now called grades. And grades have no influence at all on your matchmaking, but they are more of a reward for how much you play in a month, which is kind of what they should have always been, really. Each month you reset to rank 20, which is now called Ash 4, and you get blood points for how far up you've gained in the month. So if you hit rank 1, which is now Iridescent 1, you get 250,000 blood points, which is kind of neat, but the reward's a bit small. It's okay. Behavior's not said how the MMR judges your skill, and the game itself doesn't tell you either, like I said. It's all hidden to the player in-game, in the menu, etc. And I did also mention that people have been data mining, so we have a relatively good idea how the system works, though I would take it with a grain of salt. We'll talk about that later. For now, let's talk about my thoughts on the system through my own experiences in playing the game. Now, for me, the system itself is a tale of two killers. I've not tested Blight or Nurse extensively. In fact, I think I've played one Nurse game. And the reason why I've not tested them, even though my MMR with them is going to be probably higher than Pig, just because Pig's an M1 killer, is because FOV perks have been broken since the patch came out, and if you think I'm playing Nurse or Blight without Shadowborn, you're having me on. It's not going to happen. So I think I did one Nurse game, figured out it was bugged, and then just didn't bother playing her again, so I'm not playing. I'll test them now. Now that it's fixed, the perks got fixed on Tuesday. Now that it's fixed, I'll test them out, but up until then I wasn't going to touch them. So, the killers I tested in the end were Pinhead and Pig. Pig being a killer I'm very experienced in and have a very high MMR with, as you know, and Pinhead being a brand new killer, so my theoretical MMR is much lower. And so, let's start with Pinhead. My Pinhead games, to be honest, as much as I want to bash MMR, they felt fine. My Pinhead games were fine. They were fun. They were balanced, considering the lack of perks I had as Pinhead and the lack of experience I have since he's a brand new killer. The games felt fun, they felt fair, and it was games that I felt could have swung either way in most cases, depending on mistakes either side made. So for now, no complaints, right? System's working great. It's great. Ship it. Not exactly. We now move on to Pig, and Pig is a very different kind of worms, as she's a killer I've got a lot of experience with. As you all know, I have By far the most games played of Pig, more than double the guy in second. I've got the most perfect games of any person in the whole of DBD, like perfect game being 4K, 32k points quad Erie is the achievement that it tracks, and I've got by far the most perfect games of anybody in the entire community. So you could say I'm experienced with Pig, and you could say that slightly influenced my MMR with her. The games I had with Pig were grueling. They were a chore. They were 3 minutes, 5 minute games, you name it, it happened. They were a chore. It was honestly the most unfun and boring games of DBD I've ever had, at least for a considerable time. But the problem is, I'd have loved it if it was good players, because I like playing against good players. Most people that play this game aren't very good, so you don't really get outplayed, you kind of just feel cheated a lot of the time. Like, it's survivors. The survivors I was getting couldn't loop to save their lives. The ones I was getting, like, honestly, they just could not loop. Chases were a joke. But they were very, very, very good at holding M1. So what was happening is, say the game map, I was getting the game map, you would get a survivor that doesn't look behind them, they hold W, they just run at pallets, they drop a safe pallet. I'm an M1 killer, I've got to break it. So I break it, they move to the next one and drop it. And I can't do anything, I'm an M1 killer. I break it, they move to the next one. So you see what I mean? So I was wasting a lot of time in chases because there was just nothing else I could do. So when I was downing someone, a lot of the time I was losing 3 gens. And then you'd move to the next person, and the next person would just pick up where I left off and just kept doing the same thing. Walk to pallet, drop pallet, go to the next pallet, run to pallet, drop pallet. So it was honestly, and then I would get to a pallet that I could mind game, or like a jungle gym that I could mind game, and the survivor would just go down, like straight away. I would just immediately moonwalk them, or whatever, and they'd just walk into me, and they'd go down. So it's not even like they were good players, like they were falling for basic mind games. But the problem is, they knew how to hold down M1, and they knew that they could just drop safe pallets. I like getting outplayed. I had a 5-gen game earlier, I'll admit it. I'll admit it. One of the games I got, I'll admit, I'm the bigger person here, I'll admit, one of the games I got, some guy 5-gen me from the start to the end, but it was actually a very good player. They did mind games, they played everything perfectly, and I'll admit it, that there was one game that I played where I was like, fair enough, this person's just very good at the game. But the rest of the games I was losing, nah. The players were, no. Just no. Honestly, no. The players I was getting were not good in the slightest, and it became very, very frustrating because I knew that they weren't very good, but I was still taking an L, and it was very, very frustrating. Now, is this the MMR's fault? Well, yes, but also no, and I'll explain that now in quite a bit of detail. To me, this falls back to the video I made a few weeks ago. Maps are the issue. Maps facilitate this kind of gameplay right now, especially versus M1 killers. Hold W, run to safe pallet, force break, repeat. An M1 killer will likely never catch you. They just won't, you know, unless the Wraith cloaks and goes away, but if they just follow you, they won't catch you. They just won't. You can't bloodlust the pallets, they're safe. That's not a good player to me. Some people, I can already feel the comments being like, oh, well, that's a good player. They can lose you for 5 gens. They're a good player. No, they're not. To me, a good player takes risks. They push what they can get away with. They greed pallets. They fake windows. They fake dropping pallets. They mind game at pallets and windows. They take risks, and often it doesn't pay off, but often it does. To me, that's a good player. Someone that understands what a tile does and what you can get out of a tile. Someone that chain loops tiles together, and they take risks when they do it. It's all about risk taking to me. This is a game about mind games and how much can you get away with, and that to me is skill. That to me is what a good player is. And these sort of players, honestly, are getting punished by this system. We'll get into that later. But maps to me facilitate poor gameplay because you don't need to be a good player to get away with a long chase. You don't need to. You don't need to know a tile. Who cares that this jungle gym can be played out really well when you can just drop the pallet and it's safe and the killer's just got to break it? Who cares? Who cares that this pallet loop, you could abuse this loop and loop it 10 times if you push your luck with the killer? Who cares? Just drop it. It's safe. The killer can't do anything. They just got to break it. That's the issue with me. And maps like Autohaven and maps like Corn really play into this kind of style. You just get away with dropping pallets. There's no real outplay, there's no real mind games. You just can get away with it on those maps. You can get away with it, and you've always been able to get away with it. Now, are there maps in the game that kind of facilitate what I want from the game? Yeah, kinda. You're gonna hate me for this, but to me, Preschool and Ormond are the best examples of maps we've got in the game right now. Now, Preschool and Ormond have their own problems. Preschool's main building, for one, is atrocious. I'll admit that. And the House of Pain is ridiculous. I'll admit that. But the actual loops on the map, to me, are what I want. More pallets on maps, because to me, maps don't have enough pallets. But they're all really safe, so you can get away with it. To me, I want more pallets, a lot more pallets, but the pallets are all either unsafe or fair. And there's no bloodlust in this scenario that I have. That way, a killer's got a mind game. A survivor's got a mind game. If you don't mind game, you're going down straight away. You got to make that pallet worth it. Chain loop it with the tile next to it. Can you make a safe loop out of 2 pallets? Loop them together. Fake vaulting pallets. Vault the pallet maybe, or like double vault it, or like do mind games. Moonwalker's the killer. That's what I want from this game. Risk-taking. Reward for risk-taking. Reward for playing well. And the game currently doesn't do that. A survivor that holds W and just drops pallets would get absolutely obliterated in a map of that style. Preschool and Ormond, it doesn't happen because I'd still argue the loops are still a little bit safe. Now, I'm not saying get rid of all safe pallets because that's too far the way. Having Shack there, that's a safe pallet, that's fine. Having a jungle gym there, that's a safe pallet, that's fine. But every pallet chain looping the Shack to the jungle gym being safe as well, that we've got right now in Autohaven and Macmillan and insert map here, the game map's atrocious, that's too much. You've got to have the set tiles as the safe ones, and the interlocking ones have got to be unsafe or fair. You cannot have this. This suddenly makes the playing field a lot more level for M1 killers, and suddenly good survivors shine, and good killers shine, and killers that don't know how to loop, don't know how to chase, survivors that do the same thing, just are going to suffer more, and they're going to get lower MMR. And to me, that's what it's got to be. It's not really MMR's fault that these players are getting pushed up high. It's more maps. But since a map change is never going to happen, we all know this, it's been half a decade now, a map change is never ever going to happen, we've kind of got to deal with it. And it sucks, and it's disappointing, and it makes me quite upset that it's just never going to happen. They started with Preschool, and I was like, yeah, this is a really good start. Because this was the first graphic map update, so they updated Preschool, and I was like, yeah, they're actually doing maps the correct way. And then the rest of the graphics updates came out, and they were just reskins of the graphics, and no balance changes, except adding breakable walls, which everyone hates. And I was like, oh, their Preschool's the only one. And they didn't even fix Preschool's main building. It's still garbage. Oh. But like I said, it's not entirely the map's fault. Thanks to a data mine that Scott Jund recently tweeted out, we have some more information on MMR, of how it allegedly works. I'm saying allegedly because this data mine could be a lot of rubbish, but it might not be. I won't get into details, but in summary, allegedly, the system only cares about kills and escapes. That is all it cares about. Doesn't care about how well you're doing a chase, how quickly you go down. It's just kills versus escapes. Maybe length of match, allegedly, as well. So a longer match, everyone gets more points, but it's still kills and escapes. Now that, to me, if it's true, is disappointing. It's very disappointing, because then problems pop up across the board. So you're telling me a Blendette that hides and does gens and escapes is a good player? You're telling me that a Bubba that camps basement with Insidious is a good player and gets a 4K for free? You're telling me a killer that runs Pop Goes the Weasel is a good player? These are not good players, and the system is rewarding these players more because they can get a 4K because of their perk loadout, or because of their lack of chase knowledge and refusing to do that and only doing gens. And that also means that if you now get punished as well for going back for a save. Say you're at an exit gate and there's someone dying on a hook and you think you could potentially make a save, but you'll die in the process, you get punished. You lose rank. So it starts, you see that problems start to appear everywhere, if this is true. So I hope it's not, but based on the post, it seems to be. but I'm going to keep saying allegedly because it is data mined, behavior's not said either way, so I just hope it's not true. It's as simple as that. I hope it's not true, because if it is, disappointing, because the amount of leaks that start showing everywhere in the system. Now, overall, I do think we should take the data mine with a grain of salt and not take it as complete fact, but it does paint a rather worrying picture about the whole system. I'm hoping my pig MMR stabilizes at a more acceptable level of not just these boring survivors, but so far it's showing no signs of regressing, so I don't know. We won't know for sure how the system works until the devs openly speak about it, and I honestly don't see that happening for a while, if ever. I don't like MMR, and I think you all know I don't like MMR. In fact, I don't like it in any game. It's not a behavior thing. I just don't like MMR in any game. Hunt, Destiny, Call of Duty, Battlefield, any game. I don't like it. Maybe League, maybe CSGO, competitive games. It's acceptable. But this is not a comp game. Destiny's not a comp game. Hunt's not a comp game. We don't need this in those games. Most players fall into a sine wave, if you've ever done maths at school, when you plot a sine graph. That's the thing with MMR for me, is that you do really, really, really well, you get loads of 4Ks, then you start creeping up the graph, and then you start reaching a point where you get less and less and less kills, and then you start getting dumpstered every round, and you start getting 0k, 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 then you start going back down the graph again, and you start getting more and more and more kills, and then you reach a point where you start 4King every round, and then you're just dumpstering people, and then you start climbing the graph again. I reckon if you took someone's data for a month and plotted it on a graph, it would just look like a sine wave. Just a wave of games. Very predictable games. And if you learnt the system, I reckon you could start predicting the outcome of games very easily. Is that what you want? Is that what you want? I don't want that. That doesn't sound very good to me. If that sounds great to you, then cool, I guess. But I like games being random. Anything can happen, but that doesn't sound very random to me. It sounds very, very, very predictable. Let me know what you think of the system. Be sure to like and subscribe as well. Good luck on the code in the video, and I'll catch you in the next one, everybody. Later.